Okay, I'm just going to do a quick little recap of some things that I found out talking to different students today, and just a few things I sort of forgot to tell you or I didn't even think about. So here's just a couple little quick things. I'll try to make this really quick. So here I am in Illustrator, and once you've got all of your things laid out, like right now I just have this set up as, I've got a couple different shapes or lines with different strokes. Now, the big thing to think about, if you have a stroke, so if I look at this one and I go to my properties here, so this one, the brush is a 5-point round. Okay, now the rest of these, the brush over here there is no brush. Okay, so my fill, and let me change this over to the other, sort of the classic look, where I'm usually at. So if I look over here, these are all basic for my brush, and they're on uniform, but then this guy is on 5-point round. So that's basically creating a shape on that spline that's automatically filling it out as a 5-point round. So we'll go ahead and leave these this way just so you can see what happens when we bring it over, but you'll be able to see these are all basic. So even if you have this, you had drawn things with a brush size, you can always just go in and grab that guy and just say, you know what, I want you to be basic. Now, what's going to happen though, it's not going to have the stroke of the others, so you could always just go ahead and, grab that and then grab our old eyedropper and then grab that style. So if you've got your artwork and you used a bunch of different brushes, turn them all uniform, unfortunately, and then go through and change your style over. Now I'm going to change this one back to our 5-point round, and then I could go ahead and just say, all right, that's fine, and then bring the stroke up just so we can see what happens when we bring it in. All right, now when we go over to, we look at this guy is a stroke. Again, basic uniform. These also have rounded edges on our, the end of we have the stroke here. So we can see that we've got our caps as a round. We don't have corners here, but if we did, we could change that as well. And we'll just see how those come over. Here's no caps, just and square caps. Here I've got a dotted line, a dashed line. So again, I did a stroke with a dash of 13 points. And we'll throw that in there and see what's happening. Here again, uniform basic with just a stroke. And here we've got a circle with a gray fill and then a green stroke of 6 points. And again, we'll then look at this here as our text. Now, I'm not going to outline this just so we can see what happens when we bring this over. So I'm in a 1280 by 720 artboard. Layers, let me go to my window layers and just see where we're at here. So if I pull this down and make these guys large so we can maybe see a little bit more. Okay, hit OK. So now we can see these a little better. So I could go through and pull all these out, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit my top layer. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say release to layer sequence. So that'll make each one its own separate layer. Now they're still underneath this top layer, but now if I want, I can just pull them all out and they will all be on their own. So I could delete this guy and go in and maybe I want to change these so we know this one is orange dash. So maybe we say dash orange. And I'm going to name these real quick, so I'll jump forward in my timeline. Okay, so now that those are all named, they're all in separate layers. Remember, we left this one path as a 5-point round brush, where these are all basic. And now what we can do is go ahead and save this. So I'll say File, Save As, and I'm going to name it SPHAE. And I'm going to replace it because I already saved one over there, but that's fine. And that's ready to go. Now, another thing I found that might be causing some troubles with copying and pasting is if you go into your preferences and down to file handling and clipboard. So when that pops up, there probably you don't have AICB no transparency support selected. So if you turn that on down in file handling and clipboard and then click on preserve paths, that will help when you're pasting over Illustrator into After Effects. So if you've been having some trouble with pasting into a shape layer, that might be it. It might also be that you could always just do one sort of pen stroke. So I'll show that real quick. Copy it, or well, let's do this arc. It's a little bigger. All right, so I just did a Control C to copy that. And then if I go over to After Effects and I did a new comp, and that seems fine, perfect. Now, if I just paste, it's not going to give us anything. But if I do a new shape layer and I paste into that, what's going to happen is it's going to give us a mask. All right. If I get rid of that mask by just deleting that, now if I go in the shape layer and I do one, so if I go to the shape layer and I go to my pen tool and I just draw one point, now what we'll have down here is our shape. We'll have that path. So now we can go into the path and paste our shape that came over. Now it doesn't hold any of the same info, unfortunately. It'll just be the path. So you would have to throw on a new stroke, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that comp and get back to what I was talking about before. So we'll go ahead and do File, Import, and we'll bring in that SPHAE. We're going to bring it in as footage, and also make sure I check Create Composition, hit Import. This little pop-up will be here. Import as composition, that's perfect. And footage dimension, layer size, or it could be document size. So document size should work here because we had our artboard there. So we hit OK. And now we've got our comp, 1280 by 720 up here. Everything's in there where it was. And now if we look inside this comp, we can see we've got all of our After Effects files. Now again, we know already you can't do much. We can move these around, change opacity, things like that. But that's about all we can do. So what we're going to want to do now is take these guys and right click, and we want to create shapes from vector layer. Okay, now it's going to say some weren't converted, and we'll see what that is in just a second. So one thing that's nice is when we do the create shapes from vector layer, if you leave them as they are already selected, I like to just do a little cut, Command X, then a Command V, and then it'll put them back in here where we had them. We can take these guys and they're all together up here. And then we've got all these guys down here. So if we wanted, we could do the shy guy on all of these. Now the only one that didn't come over was our text. So if you wanted to bring that text over, you would have to convert it to outlines inside of Illustrator, and then it would come over as paths. But a lot of times you might want to just do your text over here, because then you could do some of the text animators, things like that. That one we'll go ahead and move on up to, just so we have it in here. And then I'm going to go ahead, switches and modes. And on this guy, we're going to just do the old, let's shy guy all these guys. Okay, so I just drag down, those are shy guide. Now if I turn him on, we won't even see him. Now our background here, I didn't have a layer behind my After Effects or my Illustrator flat file. So that's just black. It's really not black. It's, you know, like anything, it's transparent. So I'm just going to go ahead though and do a new solid. And we'll just say, we'll make that white, cool, make comp size, and we're good to go. And that is fine. I'm going to lock that up. So we'll bring SPH above it. There we go. So the thing to look at now, so all of these, 3, 4, 5. If we look at these guys, we'll roll down contents, group 1. All right, so there's our path, and it's got the path here, and we've got our stroke. We can see that our stroke, it came in with the rounded cap, right? So our rounded cap came in, everything's there. If we wanted to change anything, we could do it right there. Now this one though, if we go to this guy, now you can see he doesn't have his path in there. So if we roll that one down, we can see basically in here, it's a path, no stroke, no fill, because it didn't hold on to being a path. The path was the outline of that brush. So that's where I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are having trouble with bringing things over, is I think they used a brush that had a point value to it already. And so instead of letting the stroke dictate the point value, the brush was doing that, and then it just became a shape. If I wanted to bring it back over, I could bring it back over, but I'm just going to leave it as is. But for these, and I can show you one of the things that happened, but what's nice is now we can say, all right, tick gray outlines, we want to do, let's add a trim paths real quick. There we go. And now if we just come into our trim paths and we animate our end, okay, now that's the funky one. So that's the problem with the shape, right? It doesn't just fill up. So with this one here, since it's a shape layer, the trim path is not going to do what we want to do. So what we could do, let's go to our first one that is a path. What we could do is go back into Illustrator, change that over from the brush to just the regular path, and then you could re-import your file again. But we're going to go ahead and we'll just move on just to keep things moving. So if we go in and I say into my tick gray outlines and I add trim paths here, and then we can see what we want to do. So if we roll down trim paths, do we want it to, so maybe we'll want to grow up that way. All right, so I'm going to start with a 100% at the start, and then I'll move forward about a second, and then we'll just 100% at the end, or 0 at the end. All right, and that's great. It's got that there. And now if I go ahead and grab that trim paths with those selected, I can copy it and then paste it, make sure my playhead's down here, and then paste it on there. Got all these open. Paste it on there, paste it on there, paste it on there. All right, so what's nice now is we've got these guys. By just copying that, our trim paths are all working the same. And we say all these guys are the ones that are working. And we hit our U. We can see all of those keyframes. So now we can just go ahead and grab those, nudge them over a little. See how that looks. Okay, so that'd be a little faster. You can also go ahead and do a little easy ease by going up to your keyframe assistant, do a little easy ease on them. And we can also then look at these guys and say, okay, cool. Let's stagger them out a little so that we get, one after the other. Selecting each one. And this is again where that little this little plugin is nice, because I could just go stagger them out and then we get the nice little whoop. But if you have to do it by hand, you can just grab them. Oops. Grab one at a time and just move it down the line. So just deselect all, go there, go there, go there. So then you've got that little guy happening. Okay, so the same thing goes here, just real quick. So just the idea of what you could do, your art green outlines, that one's coming in. It's got its stroke as a green, the same green color we had over there. We've got the same thing as we've got the butt cap versus if we wanted to round it out, we could in here just say, all right, let's do the round cap. And then the same thing, all we have to do is grab our little trim paths, add it on there, and we've got our trim paths happening. So bring that in. Maybe this one's going to come from the other side. So maybe we're going to animate it happening that way. So let's say we've got it at 100 there, and maybe those guys come in And then that comes in and goes to 0. All right, so maybe here we get there. So, all right, so these guys come in, and then maybe about here, before they all get there, we want this to do a little overlapping action. So maybe about there, we set a keyframe of 0, move it forward, and a little after it's done, we bring this baby back up to 100. I don't know where that keyframe came from, but there you go. All right, so that comes in, this guy comes in, and then maybe we wanted the orange one to pop in. Now, we could do the same. You could copy and paste that one if you wanted it coming in the same direction. Otherwise, you could go in, set your keyframes. I'm going to go ahead and just show this. Again, this key fast thing is pretty nice. So if I come in here and say, all right, I want it to start trim pathing in maybe right here. So all I have to do is hit trim path in with my orange outline selected, and you can see it sets up, creates a trim paths, does a start and an end. And again, we could go in here, and by default, I think it's 1 second, which you can change in the settings. But we could go in, and now we'll see, we get that, then we get our orange drawing on, and we could do the same thing maybe with our dash line. So I'm going to bring that up here, so we're in the same area. So the dashed line, I could go in, click on that, and maybe say, so it's one, maybe want it to happen, it's right there, so don't. And dash line, could do the same thing, maybe just do a trim path in. And if I roll that down, or just even hit U, that'll show me what I've got. So there's my end, bring it in so it's a little faster. And now if we rewind this, boom, 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 boom. Okay, so those are all pretty fast, but that's where these things coming in are kind of nice. And so like on this guy here, maybe the same thing, we'd want to scale him up. So we could figure out where he wants to appear. So do-do-do, and then maybe he comes in and scales up. That's our center circle. And again, we could come in and say, what I'm going to do is try this out. I'm going to go, let's try key fast on this. So if I bring him so he's not even there yet, so he appears like right around there. And I think there's an overshoot option. Let's try it. So I'm going to turn on the overshoot, hit save. And what I can do now is if I do a scale up, and let's see what that does. All right, so that is a little zany. So I think what happened here too, now our anchor points are all in different spots they're from the After Effects Center. So if I undo that so that we don't have anything happening there, what I could do instead, I think what I need to do is on this, hit my command button. So for me, it would be control and click it. And then it'll center its anchor point. And then just do a little overshoot. So if we roll this down to see our keyframes, we should be in our transform and our scale. We could again take those, they're eased. Maybe we just take them in, bring that in a little, oops. And then grab this guy, scrub him in a little. And now we'll get a nicer overshoot. That was a little too much. There we go. Maybe something more like that. There we go. So, I mean, that overshoot option on here is pretty nice too. Again, just to get you started. And, then at the end, maybe SPH would fade on. I don't want to get into all that. But just to show those differences, so remember, if you don't use a brush, if you used a brush, go ahead and convert everything over in Illustrator to our uniform brush. And instead of the 5-point round, go to basic. And then your stroke will really be the stroke. It won't be a stroke on top of, so like if we look at this one, which is the 5-point round, it's got a 2-point stroke. Now the others, were a 13 because that brush, it's stroke around the fill. So just bring it down, make it your basic brush, and then it'll really be the stroke size you want. And all your colors and those things will come over. Again, I went to. So that's about it. Hopefully that helped a little bit. If you can scrape together the $20, I think that Key Fast is a pretty cool plugin. So you can always check that out. Well, I hope this helped out. Feel free to email me if you need anything else. Have a good Monday and Tuesday, or Tuesday and Wednesday. See you Thursday.